What's up, YouTube? I'm Untitled Chapter, host of Another Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. Week 1 of the 2019 NFL season is officially in the books, and the Packers have a defense. This is a surprise to many of us. I'm going to break it down, or maybe not that big of a surprise. They were talking about it all offseason. But I'm here to break down that Week 1 matchup against the Bears, give you my thoughts, give you my input, and then on Friday we'll talk about the Vikings. So if you're looking forward to that, subscribe, hit that like button. But right now it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So before we get started, first things first, we have to give a huge round of, that wasn't very huge, a huge round of applause to head coach Matt LaFleur, the Green Bay Packers. He is the one and only head coach, first-year head coach, to get himself a victory in Week 1 of the NFL season. There was a total of 8 new head coaches around the league. The likes of Freddie Kitchens for the Browns, Brian Flores of the Dolphins, who both got completely blown out in their Week 1 debuts. Cliff Kingsbury of Arizona did manage to fight back in the fourth quarter and ended that 27-27 tie out there in Detroit, but he's the first Packers head coach to win his debut against the Chicago Bears since good old Vince Lombardi. So if that's any, omen of what we can expect from the LaFleur era out there in Green Bay, I'd say that we are going to be in pretty good hands, but it was just 1 week. It's really exciting to get, the fact that we won, it's really easy to get excited and get things blown out of proportion. I'm going to try and temper expectations a little bit, and let's start off with the best way to temper those expectations and talk about the offensive performances that took place. So offensive woes galore. They struggled. First thing, they struggled to get the run game going throughout the entire game, and this wasn't too big of a surprise. We knew heading into the game that Chicago did boast the #1 rush defense in the NFL, but Aaron Jones, he had 13 carries for a lovely 39 yards. You had Jamal Williams, who had 5 carries for no yards. And it wasn't that big of a surprise. Of course, Dexter Williams was not active throughout the game, so those were our 2 running backs. They did what they could, and quite frankly, there aren't going to be a whole lot of teams out there this season that are going to rack up the running yards against the Chicago Bears. So when you transition from running to passing, you have to talk about Aaron Rodgers. He made his debut, the first snap he's had since December 30th of 2018. He went 18 for 30, 203 yards, 1 touchdown, finished with a 91.4 quarterback rating. And my thoughts on Rodgers is that he did look rusty throughout pretty much the entire game, and that is to be expected. Again, did not play a single snap throughout preseason. We did talk about that plenty heading into the start of the regular season. And outside of how rusty he looked, I would even dare to say that he is starting to look a little bit aged. Now, this is going to maybe make a few of you angry, but this could come with the fact that he didn't have a whole lot of time or have a lot of preparation in the preseason. But there were moments throughout the game where Rodgers didn't scramble maybe quite as fast as he used to. It looked like his arm wasn't as strong as he used to. I think it will come back around as the season progresses and as he gets more snap. I'm not by any means throwing the towel in on Rodgers, but these were just a few things that jumped out at me. So overall, Green Bay finished with negative 17 yards on the offensive side of the ball. After their first 2 drives, they had negative 12 yards after their first 3 drives, so they did manage to pick up 5 yards on that third drive, and they had the fewest yards in a quarter since 1994, and that's not exactly how you wanted to start the whole Matt LaFleur offensive wonder machine that was to take place against Chicago. Now, that was an electric and very amped up stadium. They introduced all their Hall of Fame players from that 1985 Bears team before the game. And they came out hungry. The defense was fast and furious all over the place, and getting to Rodgers, he didn't have a whole lot of time to get passes off or really get any sort of plays going. So I contribute a lot of the slow start and a lot of the offensive struggles to that Bears defense. That is a really good defense. We have to give credit where credit is due, and Rodgers in the offense, they'll be fine. I think as we look forward to the Viking game. We obviously want to see some improvement to that running game. We want to see more consistency, more of a rhythm throughout that passing game, but I think they will definitely be a work in progress. Rodgers has stated this before, that it is going to be a work in progress, and we can't really just start to, hit that panic button. They got themselves a victory, and at the end of the day, when you're talking about wins and losses, the most important thing to do is come up with a W versus an L. Some of the other highlights on that offense, though, I want to talk about the tight ends. The tight ends showed up in the game, and if this is any indication of what we can expect to see with Matt LaFleur's offense, I think that's going to make Graham and Lewis and Tanyan and hopefully Sternberger towards the later end of the season very happy. So Jimmy Graham, 3 catches, 30 yards. He did have the lone touchdown in the game, and quite frankly, that was a 50-50 ball. Rodgers threw that up there, and they said, just go get it. And he went and got it. He had that 1 touchdown. It was a beautiful, beautiful catch. I think they actually, rumor was, and I've watched this play, I didn't see any flags get thrown, but rumor was there was 12 men out on the field when Rodgers snapped that ball, so had it been intercepted, possibly it would have been flagged and would have came back, but I don't recall ever seeing any flags, and I watched the game a couple times. Robert Tanyan, 1 catch, 1 lone catch throughout the game, 28 yards, and then Mercedes Lewis was the real surprise. And this is a guy that we did not talk hardly at all about throughout OTAs. We didn't talk about him really at all in the training camp. He was targeted on 3 passes. He caught 2 of them, 14 yards. And in 2018, he only was targeted 4 times throughout the entire season. He had 3 catches throughout the entire season, and he had 39 yards total throughout the entire season in Green Bay. So if there's somebody on that tight end group that's going to be much happier, it's going to be him. He was, and when they discussed bringing him back, so remember, he was just on a 1-year contract last year. They decided to bring him back for another season. And when he sat down with Gutekunst and kind of laid out the foundation and some of the mindset of what this Packers offense wanted to do, they knew that they had a place for Lewis in that offense, and he would have a bigger role, because quite frankly, he was just a 6th offensive lineman last year. He was mainly there for the run blocking, but if they can utilize him as someone that they can take advantage of in that passing attack, that is absolutely going to surprise some of these defenses and add another layer of planning that needs to go into, and another person that you need to guard. So kudos to the tight ends. That they were probably my biggest surprise. The receivers themselves, nobody really stood out. You had MVS with that 47-yard bomb, but outside of that, Devontae Adams was quiet. Allison didn't even get a throw, didn't even have a catch. And then you talk about Kumro, didn't see any game time action. Maybe he was out there when he filled in, for just a little bit while Adams was on the sideline. And then your rest of your guys you didn't see any of the receivers. So overall, the offensive line, which we should talk about, because going up against that Bears defense was obviously going to be a talking point. So I think the offensive line held up well. They did give up 5 sacks. That is the most taken against the Bears in Rodgers' 22-game career. But Khalil Mack, for the most part, was definitely slowed down throughout the game, and that was definitely one of my keys to victory. As I talked about last week, if the Packers wanted to go into Soldier Field and get a victory, it was talking about getting offensive rhythm, which they found on at least 1 drive to score a touchdown, and then the defense needed to look good, which I'm going to get to in a bit, and then they had to slow down Mack. I think the main contributor that we can talk about with slowing down Mack is the fact that Brian Bulaga, who is our 10th year vet on that Packers team, showed up. Every time that Bulaga was going one-on-one with Mack, he did not allow a single sack. He did not allow a single quarterback hit. And we're talking about a guy who's coming into the final year of his contract. We're talking about a guy that is obviously struggled with injuries throughout his career. We weren't even sure that we were going to bring him back, but the Packers did see value. And it's for performances like he had against Chicago. It's exactly why you keep someone like Bulaga. Our 2 pillars on the outside with Bakhtiari and Bulaga are absolutely solid. We are going to be, jealous, or we're going to reminisce on the days when both these guys are gone. But while they are here, they are protecting the quarterback. And if there was a single dark cloud that kind of rained on that offensive line, the person that gets that award is going to go to Lane Taylor. So very early on in the game, while they were getting this pressure, while the stadium was energized and the Bears were coming, full steam ahead, Lane Taylor was someone that stood out to me as obviously someone who was struggling. So he was burned a number of times very early on in the game. And if he struggles again in week 2, I would not be surprised if Elgton Jenkins does start to get that starting nod versus Lane Taylor, and perhaps now Lane Taylor then fills in on the backside of it. Again, let's not overreact. Week 1, everyone's a little bit rocky and rusty out the gates, and Lane Taylor did bounce back in the second half. I thought for the rest of the game he did perform well, but right off the bat there, I was thinking, man, if I think it's time to put this rookie in and see if he's everything that they say he is. Which Elgton Jenkins had some huge kudos and remarks coming out of training camp and OTAs, but it wasn't the offense that had the NFL world talking on Friday morning. No, that would be something else. It's time for a drink break. So in my Q&A session after the game on Packers Radio Network after the game, and of course the next morning, the only thing that people were talking about was that Packers defense, including Aaron Rodgers, who numerous times throughout his press conference says we have a defense. We have a defense. It's a remarkable thing to think about, but the defense looked fast, they played aggressive, and most importantly, they tackled. A big concern throughout training camp was the tackling or the lack of tackling that the Packers were displaying, and again, that is a lot of your second and third string defense, but when the first string came to play, boy, they wrapped up, and I think they tackled phenomenally throughout the entire game. They gave up a total of 254 yards. They only allowed 3 points. They had 5 sacks, that beautiful interception at the end of the fourth quarter, 9 passes defensed, and the Bears went 3 for 15 on third down throughout the game. So that was, you think back to the 2018 season, or really any seasons before that, it was a big, red flag for us that when it was third down and short or third down in any distance, it seemed like the Packers could not get off the field and they were allowing teams to convert. That was a difference maker. That was a huge difference maker in this game. Chicago could never really get any momentum going because the defense was holding them. They held Mitch Trubisky to a 62.1 passer rating for the game, and Trubisky only had 2 games last year where he had less than a 62.1 passer rating. Week 11 against the Vikings, he was at 61.9, so just a hair less than what he had Thursday night. And then in week 14 against the Rams, he had a 33.3 passer rating, which is absolutely atrocious. But the thing about those 2 games is even though Trubisky performed poorly, the Bears still won both of those games, and a lot of the discussion that came out Friday, because I don't work on Fridays, so I watched plenty of ESPN, plenty of NFL Network, First Take, you name it, and the discussion on Friday circled around, is the Packers defense really that good, or was Mitch Trubisky really that bad? And as I mentioned before, I just stated it, both the Rams and the Vikings failed to get victories even though they held Trubisky to those awful performances last season, and the Packers were able to come away with a 10-3 victory. So yes, it's a new year. Only time will tell. It's very early on in the year. I think obviously this Viking game is going to have huge implications on what we think we have in that defensive group. But yes, I say the Packers defense did play that good. With 16 games in the books from week 1 of the NFL, the Packers are the number 1 ranked team in the league at getting pressure on the quarterback. They recorded pressure on 31 of 47 pass plays. That's a 66% pressure rate. And that generated 5 sacks as well as 11 quarterback hits. In 2018, like I said, on Thursday, 5 sacks, 11 quarterback hits. In 2018, they averaged about 17 pressures a game, and that's nearly half of what they managed to put up against Chicago. So that right there tells you that there's already an improvement. What fueled that improvement? Of course we know what fueled that improvement. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking in hypotheticals. Free agent signings Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith accounted for 16 of those 31 pressures. Zadarius had 3 hits and a sack. Preston had 3 hits and 1.5 sacks, including the game-winning sack that ended up the game, or finished the game in the very, at the end of the game, in the fourth quarter. An impressive 11 different players were able to get pressure on the quarterback. Blake Martinez and Kevin King each had solo sacks. Rookie Darnell Savage had a very impressive first showing just in general. He was probably my shining star and could have been my MVP of the game if it's not for the next person that I mentioned. But he played in all 73 snaps on the defense. That's 100% of the snaps he was out there on the field. He is one of only 5 defensive players that played all the snaps on the defensive side of the ball. And he, too, had a hit on Trubisky. But the man of the hour, or the man of the night, of course, Adrian Amos, was flying through that offensive line all night. He was breaking up plays in the secondary, And when we talk about Adrian, he is going to be my very first There Is Your Dagger award of the 2019 season. So without a doubt, Adrian is a much improved upgrade over Clinton Dix, and I don't care what I don't know what those Chicago coaches are smoking down there when they said that Clinton Dix is an improvement over Amos. It only took one game for me to realize that this guy plays with much more conviction. He's a lot faster. He tackles. I love what we have out of him. I think it was an absolute steal from Chicago. I think Chicago is obviously going to be kicking themselves when they see throughout the season what they picked up in Clinton Dix. And I'm really excited to see what he does paired up with rookie Darnell Savage, who, as I mentioned, has showed a lot of promise in his first game. Now, both these guys, again, Amos is on a 4-year contract, and Savage is coming into his rookie year, and that's a 4-year contract with a 5th-year option because he's a first-round draft pick. So I'm excited to see what these guys can do together. Just after one game, they held down that secondary very well. And with 1:58 left in the game, of course, Adrian had his storybook ending, picking off Mitch Trubisky in the end zone against the team that drafted him on his old home field down there in Chicago. You couldn't ask for a better ending to the game. And throughout that entire drive, I'm not one for, I hate those people that say, I knew it was going to happen, but I was waiting on that final drive for the Packers to make a play. And sure enough, Adrian did come through and get that interception in the end zone. And although the defense had to hold the Bears offense to one more series, that was the moment that I knew the game was over, and that's why he gets my There Is Your Dagger award. That's a tongue twister. The Pour Another There Is Your Dagger Week 1 award goes to Adrian Amos. So that leads me to one final thought as we kind of wrap up my thoughts and my overall opinion of how the game went out. So the offense had some really good play calls throughout the game. Yes, they did struggle. They failed to get some rhythm, but even though they couldn't get the run game going, they had that 47-yard bomb to MVS in the second quarter, and a lot of that was set up off of a play action. So even though they hadn't established a running game yet up to that point, they still were able to catch Chicago off guard with the play action and throw that bomb. And then on a second and short, they were throwing a little bit more wide receiver screen passes. And I know I saw it on at least one occasion, if not two, that they used that wide receiver, just a real quick wide receiver screen on second and short to pick up the first down when the Bears were anticipating that the Packers would come at them at a run. So these are, those little highlights, those little wrinkles in the philosophy of this new offense that's going to catch those defenses off guard. However, there is no reason, and I stand by this one, there's no reason why Chicago should have got the ball back after Amos had that interception in the end zone. So again, it was less than 2 minutes left. And the Packers, essentially, all they had to do was go out there and get a first down. And LaFleur was asked about this after the game, and he made it very evident and clear afterwards that the Packers would be aggressive moving forward to get the first down to prevent the Packers defense from having to go out there back onto the field and stopping any team's offense from scoring. So they're leaving it in the offense's hands versus leaving it in the defensive hands. But this is one of those Mike McCarthy moments that has haunted us for years, and when it came to fruition that the Packers just couldn't pick up a first down and finish the game, that gave me a lot of worry. I think the offense needs to be able to shut out the game. I think they need to be able to get that first down, take a knee, and call it a day. And that is definitely something that I hope they find an improvement for as we look forward to week 2 against the Vikings and the rest of the season. So around the rest of the league, let's start with the division. So the Vikings easily beat Atlanta 28-12. Kirk Cousins only managed to throw 10 passes the entire game, 3 total passes in the second half. So they won with a running game. And who was that running back? Well, yes, it was Delvin Cook. He ran for 111 yards, 22 carries, 111 yards on 22 carries and 2 touchdowns. I'll dive more into this, this game in particular on Friday's video as I preview the Packers and Vikings matchup. But quite frankly, what I took away from it is that the Vikings looked good. Their defense looked good. Yes, I think the Falcons' offense was struggling for a lot of the game to get any sort of rhythm and momentum, but you do have returning players there. You have returning coach. You have supposedly Matt Ryan at your quarterback, which who knows what you're going to get out of him. I drafted him in fantasy, and I'm not even sure why I did that at this point. Good thing I also took Drew Brees. But that Minnesota defense looked good. The offense looks good. And if they don't need to pass the ball 30 times to earn themselves a victory, and quite frankly, it was a blowout victory. Yes, the score was 28-12, but it wasn't really close at all throughout the entire game. So Vikings look good. Detroit managed to blow an 18-point fourth quarter lead to the Arizona Cardinals. That game did end, as I mentioned before, in a 27-27 tie. And quite frankly, Arizona probably should have won the game. Stafford made just a horrible decision throw with about 7 seconds left to go in overtime. Arizona dropped an easy interception. Had they caught that, they could have went on and kicked the game-winning field goal. But they snuck out of that one. It should have been a W. They ended up in a tie. And Detroit, woof. What else can you say? Other headlines from around the league. Patriots are still really, really good. The Dolphins, on the other hand, are really, really bad. Lamar Jackson looked phenomenal. He had those 5 touchdown passes and a 59-10 win over the aforementioned Dolphins, who let's see if Lamar can make lightning strike twice in a bottle. When you're playing the Dolphins, I think anybody can go out there and throw 5 touchdown passes. Eagles, Rams, and Seahawks all came away with very close victories. Patrick Mahomes is still that good. I think last year will prove that it was not just a fluke. This guy can go out there, he can ball. He's turning into the next Aaron Rodgers very quick. The Giants are an absolute mess, so the Dallas Cowboys had a strong win against those Giants. But that is a game in particular. It's an example of a defense, the Dallas Cowboys defense, looking really good because they went up against a really bad offense. And I think the Packers defense looked really good, and I think they went up against a pretty decent offense in Chicago. So Chicago's obviously going to win a lot more games than the Giants, but Dallas had that strong win. And then the game of the weekend, or of week 1, has to go to Saints versus Texans. That was an absolutely fun game to watch on Monday Night Football. A lot of back and forth there at the end. Both teams look great. Both of these teams look like playoff teams. Saints, of course, edge out the Texans on a last-second game-winning field goal, but that was easily the game of the week. Probably a close second would be that Packers-Bears game if you like defense, and then I'd probably give my third pick of the week to go to, I don't know, that New England blowout, whatever happened in that trailer trash Sunday night game out there in Foxborough. So with that, thank you for watching. I'm going to wrap up my final review, or my review of week 1 in the NFL. I will have my final thoughts on the Vikings-Packers game that will post on Friday. Go ahead and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and then hit that bell just to the side of it, because I will be going live again after Sunday's game. So if you want to start to get these notifications and be a part of the conversation, that's what I want you to be there for. I don't want to just sit up there and talk to myself. I had a lovely, I think I maxed out about 26, 27 viewers at midnight on a very early Friday morning. So I thought we had some fun. I just kept talking 45 minutes, kind of like I'm talking now. And I will take your questions and I will give you my thoughts. And until we meet next time, I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.